Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. My presentation will be about the 2008 financial crisis of the United States of America. So, we need to understand the definition of mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities are financial derivatives based on a bundle of mortgages that act as collateral. So, what is the process? Well, first, the bank lends to homeowners, and this is called a mortgage. And then they securitize this mortgage by bundling them up together and making a financial derivative out of it, and finally selling it in the secondary market. So, most investors see this as risk free as they are long term and stable passive income, and therefore the demand for these securities rose. This led to banks creating more of these mortgage backed securities by using the money that they made from selling these securities. So, how did the bubble inflate? Well, in 2001, as the economy was recovering from the dot com bubble burst, the federal funds rate were at an all time low of 1.25%. And this rate meant that people were able to borrow more money cheaply, and this increased the velocity of money. So, as more demand for these mortgages increased, more bad creditors entered the market as good creditors were drying up. You can say the supply of good creditors that were willing to buy these mortgages dry up. So, banks started lending to bad credited borrowers, and it burst due to several reasons. The first reason is the quick rose of the federal funds rate from 2.25% in 2004 to 5.25% in 2006. Coupling with this, homeowners were unable to pay for the ever increasing prices and interest rates of these mortgages. So they defaulted on many of them. And finally, the supply of homes finally caught up with the demand. And as more houses were built, they flooded the market, further dropping the price of these houses. And finally, the crash happened. So, how did the US action help curb the crisis? Well, there were three. First is lowering the federal funds rate. Second is bailing out by buying the poisoned subprime mortgages. And finally, they met up with international banks and cooperated in order to lower the lending rate, to lower the cost of borrowing, and ultimately help with the global financial crisis. So, firstly, they lowered the federal funds rate from 3.5% to 2%. So there was a decrease in 1.5% in the span of only 5 months. And second, they bailed out the subprime mortgages. So as these mortgages were being frozen, you can say because there were no buyers in the secondary market, the Treasury and Federal Reserve stepped in to be the buyer. So they bought many of the bad loans um, through various means. First is through the term option facility of 255 billion, and secondly, Congress passed the Housing and Economic Recovery Act that allowed the Treasury to loan out 25 billion to the real estate companies, most notably Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Federal Reserve also bought in America International Group as they declared for bankruptcy. They bought them for 85 billion, and finally, there was a Congress approved legislation that finally saw that this crisis was really happening, and they allowed the budget of $700 billion for the Treasury to spend buying up mortgage backed securities. Finally, in around late 2008, so around October, US Federal Reserve met up with other banks such as the Central Bank of European Union, the Canadian Bank, United Kingdom, Sweden, and Switzerland. And they met up and agreed to cut their rates by 0.5%. China was not a part of this, but they also cut back 0.27% as they saw that there was an economic global downturn. All of these factors meant that banks were able to borrow in times of crisis more easily, and it helped ease up the pain, you can say. And that concludes my presentation, quick presentation. of the 2008 financial crisis. And as a disclaimer, I missed out on a lot of things I cannot touch upon because this is a 5 minute presentation and um, it is a very expansive topic. And I apologize if I missed anything. And thank you for listening. And I hope you have a nice day. Bonus content. Wow, bonus content.